The Israelites and Philistines were at war again. It seemed like this happened all the time. These two nations were always at each other's throats, fighting over land and dominance. The Philistines, a powerful and warlike people, had gathered their armies for battle against the Israelites. Their armies stood on opposite sides of a valley, a sea of soldiers stretching as far as the eye could see. The tension was thick enough to cut with a sword. You could hear the nervous whispers of the Israelite soldiers, their hands gripping their weapons. Fear was contagious, and it spread through their ranks like wildfire. From the Philistine ranks emerged a giant of a man named Goliath. Towering over everyone at over 9 feet tall, Goliath was a terrifying sight. He wore thick armor and carried weapons that looked heavier than a grown man. He was the champion of the Philistines, a seasoned warrior who had never tasted defeat. Goliath strode into the middle of the valley, his voice booming across the battlefield like thunder. He challenged the Israelites to send out their best warrior to fight him. "Choose a man to fight me," he roared. "If he manages to kill me, we will be your slaves. But if I win, then you will be our slaves." Far away from the battlefield, a young shepherd named David was tending his father's sheep. David was a handsome boy, known for his courage and skill with a slingshot. He'd faced down lions and bears to protect his flock, but he had never seen anything like Goliath. David's 3 older brothers were in Saul's army preparing for battle against the Philistines. One day his father Jesse said to David, "Take this food to your brothers and find out how they are doing." David obeyed his father and traveled to the Israelite camp. When David arrived at the camp, he heard Goliath's challenge and saw the fear in the eyes of the Israelite soldiers. He was shocked. Why was everyone so afraid of this one man? Didn't they trust in God? Didn't they have faith that God would protect them? David's brother Eliab saw him talking to the soldiers and scolded him for leaving the sheep. David responded, "Is there not a cause?" He couldn't understand why no one would stand up to Goliath. David's words were overheard, and soon he was brought before King Saul himself. Saul, desperate for a champion, listened as David confidently declared, "I will go and fight this Philistine." The young shepherd's voice echoed with a determination that seemed almost otherworldly. The entire court fell silent, their eyes fixed on the boy who dared to challenge the giant. Saul was skeptical. David was just a boy. How could this mere shepherd with no experience in battle stand a chance against the formidable Goliath? The king's mind raced with doubt and concern. He had seen many warriors fall before the giant, and now this boy, barely old enough to be called a man, was volunteering to face him. How could he possibly defeat a seasoned warrior like Goliath? The Philistine was not just any soldier, he was a giant, a towering figure of strength and intimidation. His armor alone was enough to make the bravest of men tremble. Yet here stood David, unwavering and resolute, ready to take on the challenge. But David was confident. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine," he said. His faith was unshakable, rooted in past victories that seemed impossible. He recounted tales of his encounters with wild beasts, each story a testament to his courage and the divine protection he believed in. Saul, impressed by David's faith and courage, reluctantly agreed. The king saw a spark in David's eyes, a fire that could not be extinguished by mere doubt. He knew that sometimes faith and determination could achieve what seemed impossible. With a heavy heart, he gave his consent, hoping that the boy's confidence was not misplaced. He offered David his own armor, but it was too heavy and cumbersome. The armor, designed for a seasoned warrior, weighed down the young shepherd. David struggled to move, realizing that the traditional means of protection would only hinder him. He needed to rely on his own skills and the tools he was familiar with. David refused the armor, choosing instead to fight in the way he knew best, with his shepherd's staff, a sling, and 5 smooth stones from the brook. He knelt by the water, selecting each stone with care, his mind focused and his heart steady. This was his element, the simplicity of his tools a stark contrast to the grandeur of Goliath's armor. David's faith and skill would be his true armor in the battle to come. David and Goliath faced each other in the middle of the valley. The air was thick with tension as the two figures stood in stark contrast. On one side, the towering Goliath, a seasoned warrior clad in heavy armor, his every step causing the ground to tremble. On the other, the young shepherd David, armed with nothing but a sling and his unwavering faith. Goliath, confident in his size and strength, laughed at the sight of the young shepherd. His laughter echoed through the valley, a sound filled with scorn and derision. To him, David was nothing more than a child, an insignificant opponent, unworthy of his time. "Am I a dog?" he roared, his voice booming like thunder, "that you come to me with sticks?" His eyes blazed with fury, his pride wounded by the audacity of this young boy, who dared to challenge him. David, unafraid, responded with a calm and steady voice, "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin." His words were clear and unwavering, a testament to his courage and faith. "But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." David's declaration was not just a statement of faith, but a bold proclamation of the power that stood behind him. He was not alone. He was backed by a force far greater than any earthly weapon. With a swift motion, David launched a stone from his sling. His movements were precise and practiced, honed by years of protecting his flock from predators. The stone flew with a speed and accuracy that belied its humble origins. It flew through the air with incredible speed and accuracy, sinking into Goliath's forehead. The impact was immediate and devastating, a single, well-placed shot that brought the giant to his knees. The giant stumbled and fell, his massive body crashing to the ground like a toppled tree. The earth shook with the force of his fall, a resounding thud that marked the end of his reign of terror. The Philistines, witnessing the impossible, panicked and fled. Their confidence shattered, they ran in fear, unable to comprehend how their mightiest warrior had been defeated by a mere shepherd. The victory was not just David's, but a testament to the power of faith and the triumph of the underdog. David's victory over Goliath was nothing short of miraculous. It was a testament to the power of faith and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. David, armed with his faith in God and his skill with a sling, had achieved the unthinkable. The story of David and Goliath is one of the most enduring tales of courage and faith ever told. It is a story that has inspired people for centuries, reminding us that even the smallest among us can achieve great things when we trust in God and face our fears with courage. The story of David and Goliath offers valuable lessons for us all. This ancient tale, passed down through generations, is more than just a story of a young boy defeating a giant. It is a profound narrative that speaks to the heart of human experience and divine intervention. It teaches us that true strength comes from God. In a world where physical might and power often dominate, this story reminds us that there is a higher power at work. David's victory was not due to his own strength, but because he relied on God. David was outmatched physically, but he knew that true strength came from God. He was a young shepherd, inexperienced in battle, facing a seasoned warrior. Yet his faith in God gave him the courage to stand up against Goliath. He trusted in God's power to deliver him, and God honored his faith. This trust was not a blind leap, but a confident assurance based on his past experiences of God's faithfulness. David had seen God's hand in his life before, and he believed that God would come through once again. Courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. David's heart must have pounded as he approached Goliath, but he didn't let his fear control him. Instead, he took action, driven by his faith and trust in God. David was afraid of Goliath, but he didn't let fear paralyze him. He moved forward step by step with a clear purpose and unwavering faith. His actions teach us that true courage is about facing our fears and moving forward despite them. He faced his fear head-on, trusting that God would be with him. This act of bravery was not just about defeating a giant, but about demonstrating his faith in God's presence and power in his life. God can use anyone to accomplish his purposes. David was not a warrior by training, but a humble shepherd, yet God chose him to deliver Israel from its enemy. This shows that God often works through the most unlikely individuals. God chose David, a shepherd boy, to defeat Goliath. This choice was not random but intentional, to show that God's power is made perfect in weakness. David's victory was a testament to God's ability to use anyone, regardless of their background or status. God often chooses the unlikely to accomplish his purposes, showing that he is not limited by our expectations. This story encourages us to trust in God's plan for our lives, knowing that he can use us, no matter how insignificant we may feel. It is a reminder that with faith, courage, and trust in God, we can overcome any giant we face. We all face giants in our lives. Challenges that seem insurmountable, fears that threaten to overwhelm us, and obstacles that seem impossible to overcome. But the story of David and Goliath reminds us that we don't have to face these giants alone. Like David, we can find strength and courage in our faith. We can trust that God is with us, fighting our battles and giving us the strength to overcome our fears. The story of David and Goliath is a powerful reminder that with faith in God, all things are possible. When we trust in God, we can overcome any obstacle, no matter how big or scary it may seem. So the next time you face a giant in your life, remember David. Remember his courage, his faith, and his unwavering trust in God. And know that with God on your side, you too can emerge victorious.